Welcome, folks. Another edition of Boxing Chit. Josh here, along with Boz representing. I'm holding it down here in the U.S. of A. He's holding it down in Norway, despite wearing a Inter Milan jersey. So I don't know where that comes from, but hopefully all is well.
Pretty international. Yeah, I just happen to like this jersey. That's more. That's all pretty much. I'm not even a supporter of Inter Milan, but I don't hate them anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I actually got to see Inter Milan play Manchester United here in the U.S. Some years back. It was a
Oh
part of the
yeah.
International Champions Cup tournament, and it was at FedEx Field here in Maryland, and it was pretty cool getting to see Inter Milan and Man
Mm,
U. And Man U at the time was pretty solid, so they had
yeah.
Juan Mata amongst Wayne Rooney. So yeah, they were a solid team at
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah. That was a while ago. Now they are not so solid anymore.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen it, and a lot of back and forth with Cristiano Ronaldo. I've seen
Yeah.
that to the point
He's
where they've
finished.
released him.
I think he's finished there now. Yeah. Mm. All right. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. But yeah, thanks folks for tuning in. We're here to talk boxing, of course. Shout out to Rodolfo Rivera here, right on time. He says, "First, what's up, 86 and Vaz? Hey, we're all good, Rodolfo. Hopefully, all is well on your end. Viva
Yeah.
Mexico. They're
Yeah.
down, but not necessarily out in the World Cup. So hopefully, they can bounce back and find a way to get in there."
I hope so. Yeah. Argentina had to win, that
Yeah, yeah,
game.
must win situation there.
Yeah.
Rodolfo says didn't catch any fights because I was down from the Mexico loss that I forgot. Oh yeah, I feel you, man. I feel you for sure. Well, we're here to talk about some of the fights that went down. And speaking of such, of course, the first one and probably the big name that came about, or big names, would be Jose Zepeda taking on Regis Prograis for a vacant, if I'm not mistaken, vacant WBC
Yeah.
World Super Lightweight Championship. And we talked about this last week, Bob. We might have talked about it a few weeks prior, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And one of the things we were mentioning was this had the potential to be one of the great fights of the year. And it actually turned out to be a pretty great fight. We had a lot of back and forth between the two, but I think that as we had predicted, given that slight edge to Regis Prograis, that came to be. And Regis Prograis was able to stop Zepeda in, let me see what round it was because I don't
11,
recall.
11th round.
Okay, round 11. Thanks there. So Regis Prograis stops Jose Zepeda in round 11. And it was a systematic sort of breakdown for Regis Prograis, who, as I mentioned, is very much a live dog. He's still a hungry fighter looking for that big fight, and it showed last night. He has great head movement, underrated head movement, as a matter of fact. So his head stayed off the line, and it was tough for
Mhm.
the Peta to actually land on him, and I think that's what helped Regis out because the Peta, as I mentioned, while he can be an offensive fighter, he really does his best work countering. That's where he's able to
Mm.
land some of his big shots. And as if you all recall, when he fought Ivan Baranchik, he was able to get a knockout of the year. That's because Baranchik is the type of fighter who comes in very reckless
Yeah.
offensively, and he just left himself open. So it was a bad matchup for
Mm.
Baranchik stylistically.
Very
And
aggressive.
of
Yeah.
course, Baranchik hasn't been the same since then. So hopefully, he's
Yeah.
doing well, and I think he's probably done boxing. But that being said, Jose Zepeda, he had some good moments with countering, but Regis Prograis just kept it difficult for him all night. And
Mm.
Regis Prograis was landing shots from varying angles. And when he was landing, you could just see he had more pop to his punches there on the inside. And ultimately, he just broke down Zepeda, who was a good fighter, but he couldn't keep up with that offensive arsenal and that crafty style that Regis Prograis has. And
Mm.
he went down and pretty much out. The referee had to step in to save him from further damage. But overall, I think this fight showed that Regis Prograis is still very much a live dog at 140 pounds. This should have been
Mm.
on one of the major networks, I would say. And I'm surprised that none of the major networks that we're accustomed to actually picked up this fight, because you could just tell stylistically it was going to deliver. But with all of that, what were your thoughts on what you saw there, Boz?
Yeah, I was able to catch highlights from most of the rounds, I believe, or the best ones. So it was, I think, the first half it looked like a pretty even fight, but then as it went on, yeah, I mean, Prograis was kind of looked like he was starting to figure out, Zepeda, and he was able to throw to set up the right shots simply, and yeah, he was clever enough to get, and of course, hard hitting enough to get him out of there. So yeah, you there isn't so much else to say. You pretty much covered it already. It was a very good fight, very competitive. Yeah, Zepeda was really a worthy opponent, but in the end, he just didn't have enough, to beat or even last the distance against Rougarou Prograis.
Rougarou.
So that's it, pretty much.
Yeah, Rougarou was out in force last night, and
Mm,
it was great to see Prograis. I followed Prograis for a good period of time, and man, he's always brought it every time out. He's not the type that complains or whatever, and he's willing to legitimately take on anyone from what I've
yeah,
gathered with them, and he's still a very hungry fighter. So hopefully, this leads to some even bigger matchups for him, and those that some of these major networks may get behind, because that was a great fight. And as I kept mentioning, it deserved more fanfare than it got. We
yeah. I
got
mean,
we've got Tyson Fury headlining against Derek Chisora, and that's going to
yeah,
be all the way out there. But that's not even a matchup that real boxing fans care to see. Yet they pass
no,
up on the type of fight that this was. But hey, boxing
yeah.
politics, I guess.
I think if Josh Taylor should stay at 140 for a while, longer, I would love to see a rematch,
Yeah,
there, because in the first fight, I didn't think Prograis really looked himself at least in the first like 6 rounds or something. He looked kind of, I don't know, frozen or scared. Simply, I don't know what was problem, but he simply didn't fight like I had expected him. I was really expecting him to put on a lot of pressure, on Taylor, but he didn't do that in the first half anyway, as far as I can recall, and he let Taylor take away too many rounds simply in the early going. I mean, in the first half, so he
yeah,
made it more difficult for himself to win that fight. So yeah, I would love to see a rematch, and if not, then we got plenty other, of course, hot names in that division who have since become very, I mean, how to say it, gotten a lot of publicity, like
yeah.
Tank Davis or Teofimo Lopez or Ryan Garcia. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, you're spot on there. I think this opens the door for a lot of potential matchups. And you're right, that first fight between Prograis and Josh Taylor was a very competitive fight.
mhm.
And I remember scoring it, and I know I gave Josh Taylor a slight edge, maybe by a couple of rounds. I can't remember exactly, but it
Yeah,
was a very competitive fight between the two of them. And
eventually, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I thought it delivered in a major way. Now, I pulled up the ring ratings just to kind of see what is going on there at 140 or 140, 140 pounds rather. And of course, this fight between Zepeda was initially going to be Jose Zepeda against Jose Ramirez, but
Mhm.
Ramirez pulled
Yeah,
out of the fight for certain
should have.
reasons,
All
or whatever
right.
it may be.
Would have
And
been a
so
rematch, in other words. All right.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, a rematch, because those two had a very close fight a couple of years
Mhm.
back as well. It was a competitive fight, and I think it would have made for a good fight if those two would have
Mhm.
fought as well. But Regis Prograis was like, "Hey, I'm here. I'll step in," and he delivered. He was able to stop Zepeda, which says a lot. Now, so we know Ramirez is still out there, but also Ring has number 4 ranked Jack Catterall, we know he was competitive. Many thought he beat
Yeah,
Josh Taylor.
oh yeah,
We have Sabril Matias, who is the
yeah.
hard punching Puerto Rican. He's only
Hmm.
got one loss. You have Arnold Barboza, who's still undefeated and out there, and I think is
Yeah,
a very game fighter. Then you
that's the
have the
one.
likes of
Yeah.
Gary Antoine Russell, Shojan Ergashev, who is a big punching
All right.
Uzbek fighter, and
Yeah,
we had a
gosh.
couple other guys, but probably within that
Yeah.
sort of top eight, you have a lot of potential challenges there. And it
Hmm.
depends, like you said, on what Josh Taylor is going to do because he hasn't fought since February, and now we're going to be it'll all in all likelihood be heading into 2023. So it'll be interesting to see what Josh Taylor ultimately does because the talk was
Hmm.
of him moving to 147 pounds, but
Yeah,
that
I
may have
mean,
been derailed somewhat with his showing against Catterall, which
hmm.
was a competitive fight, of course, but as mentioned, it didn't
Hmm.
do Josh Taylor many favors because
No.
many felt that he lost it.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm surprised that he hasn't actually moved up yet. Being such a big 140 pounder. Especially height wise, of course, and having already accomplished everything in 140, that he could have, possibly
Yeah,
accomplished. I think it would be rather almost stupid of him to stay 140 now, especially. I mean, if you. I mean, especially given the new blood there, to put it away, the young lions that are I don't know. I think Taylor. I don't know how old exactly he is right now. Do you know?
he might be around 28, 29, somewhere in that range. Let me
Yeah,
see.
he's still not. He's still prime, but there
Yeah,
are some really dangerous punchers in at 140 right now, and Prograis being the first one to stop Zepeda, as you said, it speaks a lot.
no, he's actually 31.
All right, so yeah, I mean. If he's gonna really if he's trying to make a real great legacy, then he should at least try to get a fight with one of the either Crawford or Spence, before he eventually retires.
Yeah, yeah, and and Taylor, props to him. Yeah, I actually like Josh Taylor. He
Yeah,
fought his
me
way to
too.
his status, so he didn't get there by any gimme fights. He had to fight his
Hmm.
way there, and in some cases upset the apple cart. So he's a true fighter in that sense. Rodolfo
Yeah,
Rivera asked, "Is Josh Taylor going to stay at 140 though, or what's the deal about that?" That's a good question. I haven't heard much from Josh Taylor. I think the plan was that he was going to move up, and it seemed that
hmm.
Top Rank was kind of building him towards a matchup with Terrence Crawford, but that is now no longer going to happen in all likelihood. One reason, of course, is because Terrence Crawford's no longer with Top Rank.
Hmm.
And Josh Taylor, he's been, kind of out of the action since February when he last fought. Now, I don't know if he has an injury or anything of that nature, but yeah, I haven't seen a lot of chatter about him, and it will be interesting because he became undisputed, but that has now been dispersed. So he still has the ring, and he's still, I guess you can say, the lineal 140-pound champion. But I think three of those major belts are now outside of his hands, if I'm not mistaken. So that
All
leaves
right.
him
Hmm.
kind of there in, I don't know, purgatory or something of that nature
I
between
didn't
140 and 147. We
I
know
didn't
he's
know that. Hmm.
yeah, yeah. I was gonna say we know he's a little big for 140 at
Yeah,
this point. So 147, of course, is gonna be tough sledding. He's probably not gonna go straight into a title shot like it may have been if he'd have fought Terrence Crawford. So he's in an interesting place right now.
yeah, he is certainly is. I mean, I was just gonna say when you talked about how good Taylor is, I mean, that fight against Ramirez, that was one hell of a performance. It's just a
Oh yeah,
classic, how do you say it, example of counter punching, at its best. I believe both those knockdowns came when Ramirez was rushing, towards him and, trying to hit him, and he just pulled off a great counter punch, and
yeah.
him down. So that was one hell of a
Yeah,
fight.
one came off of a break. but Ramirez had his hands down, so you had to protect yourself at all times.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I don't remember. Well, this was the second one anyway that came from a
Yeah,
counter
yeah,
punch. Yeah, like in the eighth round or something. Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, but he's in a pretty ungrateful position, I guess. I mean, now that he is no longer the undisputed champion, as you said.
yeah,
So especially now, it would be, best for him to move up to 147. I think now he hasn't got as much to lose, when it comes to titles anyway. So
yeah. Then Rodolfo Rivera Jr. asked, "Yeah, that Catterall fight. I haven't really heard anything about him. He hasn't fought since. Yeah, yeah, that's what we're saying. He's yeah in an interesting spot. Maybe
mm,
he goes ahead and moves up. And it'll be interesting to see who he's matched with. He's top ranked. That's who
mm,
promotes him. They don't necessarily now with Terrence Crawford gone. They don't necessarily have a crop of top 147 pounders. So
mm.
he becomes one of their top dogs at 147. That being said, of course, they would likely have to do a lot of business with PBC and other promoters to make some of the best matchups outside of maybe he goes up and fights Mean Machine, Aegis Kavilaskas, I believe I said his name right, but he's still with
Oh yeah,
Top
all
Rank if
right.
I'm not mistaken, and he just beat Michael Fox probably
Mm,
last month. So maybe that's his sort of introductory to 147 pounds, if that is the route he's ultimately going to take. And then, of course, there's that rematch with Catterall, which I think would have even more stakes were it to happen. So it's just a matter
yeah.
of whether they choose to make that and whether it's a fight that Taylor wants.
I'm not so sure because it seems that Carroll is not well suited for him stylistically. Not a good style, a matchup. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there must be a reason why he didn't look good that night. Well, of course, it's possible it was an off night, but still, he lost too many rounds. Simply, I think he
Yeah.
just looked too poor for it just being a bad night for him.
Yeah, certainly that, and
Yeah.
shout out to Fighting Highlights. Thanks for dropping in, buddy. Appreciate you being here. He asked, "Yo, what's up? Do you think Whyte and Franklin would have a rematch? Another big fight that happened. Dillian
Yeah.
Whyte against I forget his first name, but last name Franklin.
Jermaine.
Jermaine Franklin, U.S. fighter, and he traveled across the pond to take on Dillian Whyte in a bounce back fight since he last lost to Tyson Fury a few months
Mm,
back. Got knocked out, as a matter of fact. So Jermaine Franklin isn't a huge name in the U.S., and this was kind of a fight that it was a wait and see fight. We wanted to see what he was going to look like and what Dillian Whyte was going to look like coming back from that. And from all indications, many people felt that Jermaine Franklin deserved a nod in that contest. Now, I was watching it, but I don't know if I gave it its full attention, But that being said, from what I had saw, it seemed to be Franklin seemed to show up and not back down, and seemed to really be one of those fighters who, despite being on the big stage, he didn't let it deter him. He
mm,
lost the last round, but I guess a lot of the early work is where people mentioned that he really kind of took the edge over Dillian Whyte. And I was just in a fight night scores stream where we were scoring one of the fights, Morales Barrera 2. Be sure to check that out. And we actually mentioned this fight, and as I had stated there, I kind of soured on Dillian Whyte, especially considering his sort of lackluster effort in the fight with Tyson Fury, not only in the fight, but just in the build up leading to the fight. He just put on a very lackluster effort. It seems like his heart wasn't all the way in it. And maybe this is just a kind of a carryover from that, where he just kind of came in there, expecting probably Jermaine Franklin not to put up as much of a fight as he did, and many people felt he lost. So, or whether a rematch is in store, that'll be interesting. There, fighting highlights. I don't think it's something that Dillian Whyte will probably want, especially with Anthony Joshua being there ringside, and Eddie Hearn and Eddie Hearn, Joshua. It seems to align towards a rematch between Joshua and Dillian Whyte, someone he's already defeated, of course. And they do
Mm.
have some history there. And the first fight was a pretty decent fight overall. But maybe that is what they're looking to have next. It will be a great domestic fight. And of course, with Franklin, that kind of leaves them out there to see, sort of in a waiting mode to see if any other top name out there at heavyweight chooses to fight him, and he becomes an opponent in that sense, and looks for another opportunity to kind of upset the apple cart, or at least in theory. So we shall see what ultimately comes about. But do you have any thoughts on Dillian Whyte, Jermaine Franklin there,
Oh
Boz?
yeah, oh yeah, you bet I do. Franklin, he really surprised me in a pleasant way. When I first saw when he stripped down in the ring, I was like, holy crap, this guy's got a lot of lard on him. That didn't look good, physically. But when the fight began, I was like, holy shit, this guy can really box. He had a great jab. He had a really fast hands for his
Yeah.
for being a fat guy, to put it that way, simply overweight. Really fast hands. I thought he won. I mean, he carried the pace. He landed plenty of shots, and I actually had White winning only 3 rounds in the whole fight.
Okay.
So I had Franklin winning by 117, 111. So that was a heinous robbery. That was ridiculous. When I heard, first 150, 150, I was like, oh no, that's ridiculous. And then I heard 160, 112, and I said, all right, at least those two got it right, because I thought they were going to give it to Franklin. Then, what the hell? They gave it to White. Come on, you can't be serious. So that was terrible, but that's the way it goes when you're fighting away against a guy who's clearly being how you say it, protected by his big promoter and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I saw that Franklin later at the press conference said he would like to have a rematch, but I would like to say only if it's gonna be in America and with different judges.
Yeah.
So that's the only way he can get justice, because White really looked. I mean, he did land the biggest punches because he is the bigger puncher, right? So
Yeah.
those judges, I think, gave him all the rounds that he landed some big punches, but it doesn't mean that he really won those rounds.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
like Franklin would dominate for 2.5 minutes, and then in the last 30 seconds, White would start to
Hmm.
do punch away, and then you cannot give a guy a round just because he lands through 3, 4 big shots, but he hasn't done anything the rest of the round, right? You can't give him that. Can't give him the round. That's how I
True.
see it anyway. So it was a terrible, terrible case of judging, and Franklin was really, a lot better in that fight, but he didn't have the power, unfortunately, to put
Yeah.
White away. So that was the decisive factor. In the end, he did get hurt in the last round, but he was really brave and tough and bounced back each time he got hit with something big. So he's shown a lot of heart as well. So just want to say, you know, kudos to you, Jermaine Franklin. Bravo.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, he did this across the pond in his first major stage fight, and that says a lot. And I think he probably won a lot of fans here on that night. Now, I don't
Mm,
think that rematch is going to happen. Uh, I think that Anthony Joshua was
yeah,
there
no,
for a reason,
yeah.
and maybe that was a strategic thing because Dillian Whyte, he picks up a win. Anthony Joshua coming off of those two Usyk fights need an opponent, especially on the domestic side, to build up the confidence. How about someone who's outside of his loss to Fury, been on somewhat of a streak? I guess you could say a hot streak, and take
Mm,
away the sort of loss to, which was a definitive loss to Povetkin, but White had been kind of hanging around there clamoring for a title shot for a long time. And we thought this rematch was going to happen at some point anyway. So maybe 2023 is going to be Whyte versus Joshua. And this is the type of fight that will give Anthony Joshua maybe some confidence heading into it,
Mm.
coming off of those back-to-back losses to Usyk. And if he gets a win, of course,
Yeah,
then that
it
puts him right
should.
back in trajectory for another one of the top names that are out there. So I believe that may be what they're seeking.
Yeah, I think, and then then I was gonna say, and then Joshua's gonna retire Dillian White. That's probably what's gonna, and I hope so because as I said before, I don't think White. I think he's gotten far too many chances, more than he's deserved. I mean, the guy gets knocked out by Povetkin, who's 41 or something at the
Yeah,
time. Then he gets an immediate rematch. But Jermaine Franklin, as you said, he will not get a rematch. No way, because that's not in their plan, in the Eddie Hearn's plan.
yeah,
So this was just meant to be, as you said, a fight that where White was supposed to be, like get his how to say feet back on the ground, whatever. Uh, get a win, simply before he eventually takes on Joshua. And because, had he not been given that decision, of course, there wouldn't be it wouldn't be justified to make that rematch, I believe, since White has lost also to Fury earlier this year. Now, if he lost, he did lose in reality, but
yeah.
not officially. But it doesn't matter because he got that decision, a really bad one. So now Hearn can say, "Oh, all right, he won this fight." They can pretend like he won this fight, and now they can pretend like this rematch with Joshua will be like two equal fighters almost,
Yeah,
but it's not. We all know it's just rubbish.
yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt. I think we're all in agreement there. Shout out to Random
Mm.
Acoustic Thoughts who says, "Big up, fellas." Also, it sends this shout out to Rodolfo, Random Acoustic
And one
Thoughts.
more thing I want to add, I think the behavior of White is disgraceful. Also, before this fight, he was like making fuss, making scenes at the pre-fight conference and stuff like that. And I don't like. I think we don't need people like that in boxing. We should have as few as possible. So out you go, Dillian. Go away. That's what I would like to say.
Yeah, I don't view him as a real threat for title contention at this point. For sure, he would, of course, have to go through the likes of Fury or Usyk, and I don't see him beating either of them. And maybe if he's matched up with Joshua, and I think that Joshua will win that fight again, then he's really done at that level unless he wants to just kind of be an opponent, just an opponent
Mm,
there for the young crop coming up at some point as they continue to step up. But that being said, yeah, his time has essentially passed, and the time that may be here at this point is Fabio Wardley, who was on the undercard of this particular matchup, and he took on Nathan Gorman. Gorman was a highly touted heavyweight from the UK scene. I guess some can argue he's still, in some senses, a highly touted heavyweight from the UK scene, despite taking now his second L. But Fabio Wardley and Gorman put on a hell of a fight yesterday for the period that it lasted, and I feel that we kind of saw something from both of them. Now this ended up being a third round TKO, I believe, or at least
yeah,
the corner threw in the towel.
yeah.
So this was after Gorman had been dropped a couple of times, might have been three times.
Three, yeah.
Okay, three times, and man, but I will say that Gorman really tested Wardley, and
Mm,
Wardley looked a little bit shaky there
yeah,
for a second, and he was busted and bleeding. But Wardley bit down on his mouthpiece or his gum shield, as they say, and let it off. And he really broke down Gorman with pure power
yeah,
and speed, just laying in his combinations, choosing to fight fire with fire. So you like to see that from him. He didn't melt
yeah,
under the pressure. He kind of just backed it all up, and we got to see a side of Wardley we hadn't seen previously, probably because the opponents weren't up to snuff to that degree. But Gorman, I felt, tested him. And Wardley, like we said beforehand, if he's expecting to be what he's expected to be, then he's going to need to beat Nathan Gorman. And when it was all said and done, Wardley was able to find whatever was needed there on the inside to pull off that win, and he did it in impressive fashion, as far as I'm concerned. What were your
Mm.
thoughts there, Boz? I know you were
Yeah,
high on Wardley coming into the fight.
yeah, I am. I mean, think he's still got something to work with, defensively. That's what worries me. That he took too many shots from a guy, who is not really, elite level anywhere near that
No,
heavyweight. A decent fighter, but nowhere, near that level. But yeah, he's just got a lot of heart and a lot of energy, and of course, he's a great puncher. And if you compare him and Dubois, they have both fought. They have two, I know, common opponents: Richard Lartey and Nathan Gorman.
oh
All
yeah,
right, Dubois took 4 rounds to knock out Lartey, and Wardley two only. And now Dubois took five to knock out Gorman and Wardley three. So it's always two less than Wardley needs Dubois. And why is that? Because simply he's faster. He's
yeah,
faster. He's a little more effective, I think. And if he fight, I think he will fight probably Dubois sometime rather soon. I think.
yeah.
Then I think he will probably also knock out Dubois.
Hey,
That's
yeah, that would be, I think, an excellent matchup when it happens. Now, I was high on Dubois, and I still like Dubois,
Yeah,
but
me
I
too.
think that the fact that he's picked up a title can be a bit misleading, because when he fought Joe Joyce, he showed some good moments, but Joyce was able to break him down, and it was
Yeah.
primarily by using a jab, which was interesting, right? So
Mm,
that showed that Dubois, if he can't get you out of there, then you can certainly make it a fight for him. And of course, Joyce, we do realize he seems to be at that top level. He has one of the best chins in the sport,
mm,
period. So not to say Wardley fight would go that same way, but I do think that the Dubois title is, or him having that WBA title, is a bit misleading. He picked it up over Trevor Bryan, who probably shouldn't have even had that title, because he's really beat no one. And Dubois, I think that he's shown that he probably hasn't fixed those issues that made it a tough fight for him against Joyce, and that having that title
mm,
probably doesn't help such. And I think that if they are eventually matched up, Wardley can make it very interesting for him. Not only
mm.
Wardley, but now I definitely think there are some other heavyweights that are out there who could make it interesting for Dubois, because I just feel as though we haven't really seen sort of that evolution of Dubois since
Yeah,
that Joe Joyce fight. So I haven't been impressed with any of
yeah,
the stuff that he's done since then. And I've been high on him, but I wanted to see him further develop. And for him to be able to get a title shot against Trevor Bryan and pick up a title before Joe Joyce was able to get a title shot is very
mm.
interesting to me, and I think does him a disservice.
Yeah. The Wise fought, pretty easy opponents since that Joyce fight. So it was opponents that he was meant to beat. Simply. So as you said, we didn't see his evolution because he hasn't been really challenged since then. Properly. And yeah, I think Wardley simply has that edge over him, that he's faster. He's less, like bulky.
Yeah,
Less heavy. Simple as that. So he's got a good chance, of course, unless he should get tagged first and hurt and
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like that. He last night he had a big problem. I believe his nose was kind of
yeah.
cut up or something. So
Yeah, I think
yeah,
that's where the majority of the blood was coming from. Maybe
yeah,
not just inwardly, but on the outside as well. Yeah, as you mentioned, some type of cut there on his nose, and
yeah.
that was
Well,
certainly from a punch or a punch or two.
yeah, Gorman is a heavy guy and a strong guy, obviously. So to take a punch or several from that guy.
Yeah,
it can easily happen, and that same can happen against Dubois, and then it will be a bigger problem because Dubois is quite a lot better than Gorman, and and can punch also. Of course, it's only that he is slower than Wardley. That's the big
yeah. Yeah,
difference.
and I'd imagine Dubois would be the favorite heading into the fight, which is understandable. Of course, he's the champion, regardless of the situation, and he has fought the better competition, I guess, full scale, especially considering he took on Joe Joyce. Now, that will be an interesting one, and maybe it gets
Mm,
made somewhere down the road. And I think that will kind of shed some outlook on who could potentially be that next guy as far as the UK heavyweights, that next guy at that world stage who could make a name for themselves and kind of be out there for a good period of time. So we'll
mm.
see.
Yeah, maybe that guy Johnny Fisher is like treated as the new hope of British heavyweights.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so he has looked so far. I mean, in the last one fight I've seen him, and he does have power, but he was fighting a guy who is just not so good.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, not in a good shape.
Yeah,
So
Johnny Fisher. Johnny Fisher. Yeah, he has a lot of fanfare, so he could become that guy, that
yeah, it's
UK
just
guy
that
that people back.
yeah, he's had only 7 fights, I believe now. So
Hmm.
yeah, it will take him some time to get to the stage where he can challenge the bigger names anyway.
Yeah, they're slowly building him, and he has looked more and more confident as he's continued to rise. And as
Mm,
long as they continue to match him properly and get him in with some guys that really test him and show him different styles and different wrinkles to the game, I think that will help him as he moves forward to get into that contention. And he is a name that certainly is out there to watch. And of course, as we mentioned, on the American side, the heavyweight Jared Anderson, he's a name that is out there. He's going to be fighting pretty soon,
yeah,
and he's someone who's also on a trajectory where he's coming up and looking to make some noise and become that name at heavyweight for the American side. And all of this could lead to him being in the mix there for the likes of Wardley or whomever it may be that kind of comes through the fray once it's all said and done, and we get clarity between Usyk and Tyson Fury and whatever is going to happen as far as an undisputed heavyweight title fight. So
yeah,
that can make things interesting. And speaking of that, I guess the intent is for Usyk and Tyson Fury to face off at some point here in or in 2023. And we know that Tyson Fury is about to take on Derek Chisora in the most unwanted trilogy the boxing world has seen. But that being said, we'll see what comes about from there. I guess the expectation is that it'll be Usyk next, and that's not to count out Derek Chisora, but we have to be honest in that this is a fight that
yeah.
not too many people were clamoring for, and we're expecting
Mm.
Tyson Fury to win for a third time, and we'll see what
Yeah,
he does from there.
yeah, that was really dumb of him. I mean, he's just ruined a possibility of a better fight, of course, happening between him and somebody else. Like whatever you mean, for instance, Joe Joyce or
Yeah,
somebody like that who could really give him a true challenge.
certainly.
Obviously. So I'm really disappointed at Fury. I mean, it shows that he has begun to doubt himself. I think perhaps because the old Fury who came out of an almost 3 year
Yeah,
retirement and took on Wilder, most dangerous guy back then in the division on the planet. That's not the same one, now we see now. That's not the same guy anymore.
yeah.
So I don't know what happened, but he's
Well,
probably,
he has
yeah,
been pretty erratic over the second half of the year here in terms of bouncing between retirement and
yeah. Yeah,
fighting guys who haven't fought in forever, etc.
I think it's the family, now. Probably the family life has gotten to him, and made him a little too cozy,
Oh
and
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, certainly.
soften him up.
Certainly. Shout out to Mad Dog H, who says, "What's good, my boxing homies? They appreciate it, Mad Dog. Thanks for dropping by. Feel free to chime in. Yeah, we appreciate having you here. It's always good to discuss some good boxing issues and action. Excuse me, that is taking place. We were talking about Tyson Fury. Well, we kind of shifted. We were talking about the heavyweight division in general, but Tyson Fury and the potential of him taking on Usyk, sort of the erratic behavior of Tyson Fury over the last half of this year. And ultimately, it has come to Tyson Fury is going to be taking on Derek Chisora in a fight here next week.
Hmm.
And we expect Tyson Fury to win, but the real question is, where does he go from there? Hopefully, no more retirement talk. But I guess all indications from some of his latest stuff is that he's going to push for that Usyk fight. And I think Usyk, he should be rested and healed by the time that this happens. So if we get that in the March, February, March time frame as far as next year, then that would be cool. It would be cool
Hmm.
to see. And I think it will be a good fight. And you'll have people on both sides who favor their fighter more definitively than the other. And it should make for some entertaining build-up as well because Usyk has a great personality, and we know Tyson Fury has one of those eye-watering
Colorful
personalities
person.
that he can really excel a fight himself in some
Yeah.
points. So that should make for a very interesting
Hmm.
back and forth as we go
You
through that
big
press conference
dosas. What's up, you big dosa?
process.
Yeah, he's a very
I am being.
I mean, it's like it doesn't get dull with him around. That's for sure. With Tyson Fury there, I mean, even though he's still, he's yeah, we can only hope that he will after this rubbish fight that he will take on Usyk or somebody like that. I mean, somebody else who is really worthy of fighting for him. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Time will tell. Time will
yeah.
tell for
Only
sure.
time will tell. That's a song.
Oh yeah, yeah. Hey,
Mm,
gotta show love to the musical folks
yeah,
out there. We got
yeah. I think. Yeah, I don't know. As you said, you got. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of who else he he eventually Fury could fight. If not Usyk, then
yeah. All roads seem to point toward Usyk, and unless he's gonna fight
yeah,
Anthony Joshua, like it was
yeah. That's the one that should
supposedly
have
discussed.
should have happened last year. That's a real shame it didn't.
Yeah, it's crazy. We should have had a combination of a
Mm,
lot of these fights, like Wilder, Joshua, Usyk, Usyk Fury, Usyk
yeah.
Wilder. I mean, just some others in the mix.
Yeah,
Joshua Fury. I
Joshua
mean,
Fury,
there's so many
Joyce,
combinations. Yeah, we never did get those, and the question will be
Joyce.
if we see them.
I
You
know
know,
he would never fight Parker because they are buddies. They train together. All that.
okay.
Well, now Parker has lost to Joyce, so there's no need either. Yeah, this is funny. That's a good comment.
Yeah, Mad Dog H says, "Yeah, we need heavyweight undisputed for the press conference. We need Fury to wear Batman costume and Usyk the Joker. That would be pretty cool to see. We know Fury will show up in a Batman costume, and I don't
Yeah.
doubt that. I don't doubt that Usyk will meet him right there, as you mentioned, with the Joker sort of moniker. So that would be
he
cool to see.
he is the Joker. I mean, both are, but yeah, Usyk is also a fun guy. I think he would be probably in on it.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it'll make for some interesting stuff. So hopefully we get to see that in
Trying to
2023.
trying to imagine them both in those costumes. Fury would make a really massive Batman. Usyk with that smile on it would
Oh
be really
yeah,
funny.
yeah. This will be a chance at having the first undisputed championship since what is it like 2000 or something like that. But I know it was three belts at the
Yeah,
time, right? Or something like that.
yeah,
Was it Lennox Lewis? Was he
yeah. That was in '99 with Holyfield. It
99?
was yeah,
Okay.
November when he won it. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
so
rematch.
it will have been a while, and
Yeah.
because Vladimir Klitschko, he could have been undisputed, but Vitaly had one of those belts, and therefore he never became undisputed at the weight.
Blame it on the big brother.
Yeah, yeah. So this would be a major statement, getting an undisputed heavyweight champion,
Mm,
and them actually defending it, or keeping them and
yeah,
defending them because we're feared to win. Hopefully, he doesn't retire because he's been talking about retirement a lot. And if he
yeah. I
becomes
mean,
undisputed, it's a matter of whether, because he feels that he's already accomplished everything. Some would beg
right.
to differ, of course, but hopefully he does.
Yeah,
Whoever wins actually defends them.
he's already 34, and so now he's kind of getting on also towards the end. I mean, where it's usually the prime ends for a boxer. So I don't think he will go on so much longer anyway, very much longer.
Yes. So
Mhm.
hopefully we get the best of what is out there from them
Yeah.
in this particular period. So we shall see. Now,
Mm,
as far as another headlining fight that actually took place, it was Zach Parker against Joshua
yeah.
Ryder, or John Ryder rather.
John Ryder, yeah.
And this was a fight I actually didn't get to catch. I know what
Me
ultimately
neither, but
happened was an injury to
turns out we didn't miss that much.
yeah, yeah, yeah. An injury to Parker's hand. He broke a hand. I
Yeah.
can't remember which one, maybe the right hand or whatever. But that being said, John Ryder is, I guess, the interim WBO champion. It may be. Was that
You
his?
know, I expected him to win that fight, but not this way, of course.
Yeah,
But yeah, I thought that he would probably win because he's been there with tougher opponents and beaten a few of them, even like Jacobs and a few others. But yeah, I mean, now he has actually a belt, so he has accomplished pretty much everything that he could have hoped for.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
so
So yeah, interim WBO super middleweight title. And yeah, you're right.
maybe, yeah,
Ryder's one
maybe.
of those guys. He's been a mainstay in the sport. One of those rugged guys who is just
Hmm,
kind of there, not a star necessarily, but he's a fighter. He'll take on anyone. He's been on the wrong
he's
end of
like
some decisions, but
Glenn
he's
Johnson.
always game. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
he's always game, and so it's been a good year for him actually. Being able to take out uh, Danny Jacobs and now getting this win, getting this interim title, so it's not over for him, and he looks to move on to some bigger fights, which I think is going to be,
Hmm,
which is going to be a plus for him as he continues to play out his career, head into the sunset. I guess you can say another big fight
yeah.
for him is probably in tap.
I would like to see him fight Eubank actually, Chris Jr. Maybe, yeah, because that would
Oh
be
yeah,
a big domestic fight, pretty big. And
yeah,
simply because I would like to see how they would kind of, how to say, how that would play out, that clash of styles.
yeah, yeah. That
The
would be an
box,
interesting one there.
yeah,
And
Eubank is like more a boxer puncher, while the Ryder is
mhm.
like a brawler, more or less, slugger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe Eubank is going to be fighting in a week or two or something of that nature.
Hmm.
If I'm not mistaken, I'm gonna look it up.
Against Liam Smith, was it?
Oh yeah, that's who it is. Yeah, Liam Smith. So
Yeah.
that should be a pretty good fight right there.
Yeah, I
Um, I,
didn't expect Smith to fight at 168, is it? Yeah. Or 160, maybe. I don't know.
I was thinking potentially 160.
Hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
Liam Smith has done pretty well lately. Had a
yeah,
couple
he's looked pretty
bigger
good.
wins. Yeah. Yeah, I like him. I mean, he's simply a really hard working fighter and likes to always brings a good fight, and likes
Yeah,
to mix it up.
yeah, I think he's bounced back well from that Canelo fight, and he seems to be in good form.
Hmm.
He's going to make this a fight for Chris Eubank Jr. Now,
Yeah, it says
despite
it's at 160 here. It says boxer. Yeah, that's what I would
160, okay, cool.
because it would have been a giant big leap for Smith from 154 all the
Yeah,
way to
yeah,
168.
to go to 168. Yeah, that would have been
Mm,
that would have been his first time at 168. We know that Eubank Jr. has been there, but this should make for an interesting fight, an interesting matchup, especially on the domestic
mm,
side. And as far as I'm concerned, it may be more on that 50-50 range. Some may be leaning towards Liam Smith, while Chris Eubank Jr. he has looked good at times, and he seems to be an athletic, strong fighter. He seems to have some punching power. He
yeah.
can be beat. He can be outboxed. And Liam Smith is a pretty solid boxer, and I think he
Mm,
can probably weather the storm to a certain degree as long as he controls his range and take this to a decision or something of that nature, which would likely be his best opportunity to being able to defeat Eubank Jr. And I think it's a pretty good fight overall. Just looking at it on paper, 50-50
mm.
matchup as far as I'm concerned.
And Liam Williams is fighting on the other car as well. That's pretty interesting. I mean, because well, Smith has fought and beaten him twice. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, good
Eubank,
wins.
very good. Yeah, I think it's just that well, Smith has lost also to Kurbanov. So, but that was away in Russia. It was a close decision apparently, mostly. So he has really kind of learned from that Canelo defeat, I guess, and has
Yeah.
gotten better even.
Oh yeah, I forgot he was in there with Hami Munguia as well at 154. So he did lose to Hami Munguia.
Well, yeah, yeah, but he went the distance.
Yeah, yeah. So
Mm,
since that Cabano fight, he took out Anthony Fowler in a fight that I think I had. Well, I know I had thought Anthony Fowler would pull off the win, but I was wrong. And it showed that Liam Smith, hey, I'm not out of here yet. Then he went up against Jesse
mm.
Vargas, stopped him, and
Yeah, it was a
picked up
bad
another
thing.
W from there. So Liam Smith, he's been in pretty good form. So I think he's certainly going to make it a legitimate fight for Chris Eubank Jr., who, as
Yeah,
mentioned, is a solid fighter or whatever. But despite all of his sort of edges that he has physically, doesn't necessarily mean he's going to pull off that victory because he can be
mm,
outboxed. If we've seen that before.
yeah. I mean, against Gross, for instance, and yeah, I think he lost to
Billy
just a
Joe
sec.
Saunders,
Yeah, that's right. That was the first loss. Yeah.
bless you,
Thanks.
bless you. So
Yeah,
he pulled off the win over Liam Williams in his last fight. So common opponent there.
yeah, he
Uh,
did right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's pretty. Say he's kind of unpredictable. Sometimes he really looks good in a fight, and sometimes he just doesn't really impress Eubank. So yeah,
yeah.
I think his father was actually. I think most people don't really remember that Eubank Senior had a few fights which he actually should have lost when he was the super middleweight champion, but
Mm,
you know. He just got the decision or got a draw once, I know, from against Ray Close, Northern Irish fighter. And I watched that fight. I didn't know because I wanted to see why. If it was really a draw, and it
yeah.
turned out I had Close winning that fight.
Oh,
Actually,
cool.
yeah. So, but he was fighting away, in England. So that's how it goes against a very, very popular fighter.
Certainly, yeah. We've seen that happen without a doubt.
Mm,
Uh, so hey, chalk it up to I guess the boxing business in some sense that tends
yeah.
to we tend to see situations of that nature. But hey,
Yeah. I mean,
hopefully we can just get a good fight out of this, and we get to see
yeah.
who's the best between the two.
I thought the problem with bad judging was mainly now, in America, but no, it turns out it's also in UK. Last night we got to see that all again. Yeah, they had their share of really poor scoring in the last few years.
Yeah,
But
yeah, certainly, certainly. So. speaking of last few years, Josh Kelly, he was a guy who was highly touted, looked to be that next superstar of the British world at the very least. It looks like he's going to be making his return, taking on Troy Williams
Josh
on
Kelly, yeah,
December 2nd.
you were talking about that guy Anisian who beat him
Yep, yep.
in. Yeah, that was the thing. Yeah, in
Yeah, he really broke him
2021.
down. He really broke
Yeah,
him
right.
down.
Yeah, Venetian is really he's a beast when he. I mean, at least against those fighters that are not really elite, but kind of in the middle. Yeah.
Maybe that was a big step up for him too soon in terms of Avanesian because two fights prior to that, he had fought Ray Robinson, not Sugar Ray Robinson, but
No, of
regular Ray
course.
Robinson in a fight that many felt that Kelly lost and he didn't look good. It was supposed to be his U.S. showcase, and
Oh
yeah, it was
yeah,
lackluster.
Robinson. Or that was a draw. That was the same thing. I know that Robinson had a draw against Cavalier. What's his name? Yeah, that guy from Lithuania. That I now forgot his name. Was it?
Kavalauskas,
Yeah, that was Cavalier. Yeah, I
Mean
know that
Machine.
people said that he should have won the fight, Cavalier, because
Yeah,
mm,
yeah. Ray Robinson, he's just one of those guys who can box and make things very tricky. Especially was the case for Josh Kelly. He didn't look good in that fight. I felt that Ray Robinson pulled it off, and of course it was a draw and didn't do
yeah,
Josh Kelly any favors. So that
mm,
Avanesian fight kind of took it out of him. So he's on the comeback trail. This guy he's taking on, Troy Williamson. I don't recall seeing him. That being said, I see that he does have a win over Ted Cheeseman, who's a UK
oh
fighter, a
yeah,
little scrappy UK fighter that
Cheeseman,
seen
yeah,
him. That's probably
Cheeseman.
one of the bigger names, at least that I noticed on there. Outside of that, uh,
Yeah, Cheeseman, I remember. I mean, he's always been kind of limited. He's
yeah, yeah,
pretty got pretty much got one game, and that's like going to the body, doing going like this, with his head forward and stuff.
yeah.
Yeah,
So Troy Williamson is 19-0-1 with 14 knockouts. So this is going to be for the British super welterweight title. So this is going to be another
mm,
opportunity for Josh Kelly to kind of right the ship in a sense because at one point he was considered to be that next top prospect, and I guess you could say he was that next top prospect, but it kind of came down to earth. He hasn't yet gotten over that leap in competition. You know what I'm saying? So we'll see how he does with him and what this leads to. Because if you're going to have a British title, then that should lead to European title, which should lead to a
mm.
world title, and he's going to have to fight
Don't
some
mess
live
with
bodies, I'd
the.
imagine, to get to that point.
Never mind that Commonwealth title. That's just nonsense.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes, but yeah, it'll be interesting because I do like Josh Kelly's style, but we'll see what that mental makeup is like now that he's
Mm,
taking some damage in a sense. He's taking a hit in that fight with Avanesian, who
mm,
Avanesian, speaking of such, going to be taking on Terrence Crawford at some point here soon. Is going to be on BLK Prime. I guess they won the purse bid
mm.
for this fight, or at least Terrence Crawford mentioned they offered him $10 million guaranteed or whatever. And he was like, "Hey, I'm taking that." And of course, we know that things broke down between
Smart.
him and Errol Spence. So
Yeah,
this
with
is a
Red.
fight that a lot of people have been dogging it. I do think that Avanesian
Oh,
is better than some think, and he will make it somewhat of
mm,
a fight. Now, I do expect Terrence Crawford to win this fight. That being said, a lot of
naturally.
people have kind of been downplaying David Avanesian, and I guess
Mm.
you could say so if you don't know him or you haven't really seen him fight. But I think he is a better fighter
He's
than some
always
have given him credit for.
Yeah, he's always dangerous. I just saw that fight actually is on my birthday on the 10th.
Oh, on the
December.
10th,
So
December 10th. Shout out early
yeah,
birthday celebration. Dun, 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 dun.
thanks. Yeah, that's gonna be fun. I
All
don't know
right.
if I'm gonna get to watch it then, but anyway.
Well, it's gonna be on this new service. Well, I don't know how new it is, but it's a streaming service called BOK Prime,
Hmm.
uh, which may be Black Prime. I think that may be what the BOK stands.
Yes,
But
probably. Yeah.
it's a subscription service, and the fight in itself is looks like $40, 39.99, I believe. It's going down in Omaha, Nebraska. Uh,
Omaha.
it's going to be presented through this pay-per-view.bokprime.com. So,
Hmm.
of course,
Yeah, I think
people had to go online to check that out. I don't think it's going to be on any network given such. So you'll have to really kind of search and dig for it.
right. I think it's hard to expect anything else than a Crawford victory there, because also Venetian, yeah, as you say, he's better than many people think, but he's still not a boxer in the same kind of
Yeah,
vein as Crawford, So he
yeah,
cannot shift from southpaw to orthodox or so on. So
yeah,
there's the big difference. But he does have power, so maybe he can, make it really uncomfortable for Crawford anyway. As long as that fight lasts, he can hurt him and stuff like that to the body, maybe. And yeah,
yeah. Rodolfo Rivera says, I don't blame Crawford. Get your money, man. And Avanesian is still a top 10 welterweight contender, too. That is correct. He is
get
still
you,
a
man.
dangerous guy. He's certainly a dangerous guy. But we all know Crawford is highly regarded and is arguably the best boxer in the world. So naturally, there's going to be that expectation of him winning and probably in definitive fashion, which may very well be the case. Rodolfo mentions it's not like it's Kell Brook or Amir Khan. True. Avanesian seems to be in the prime of his career at this point. This is probably going to be the best version of Avanesian we've seen, given what he's looked like in his last few fights, because he does seem to be on top of his game, and that's going to make it interesting. So we'll see how Crawford handles Avanesian. And
Hmm.
sometimes I think that because the names aren't big, some people downplay the fights. Like if
Yeah.
Crawford were to fight Stanionis, I think that you would have those that would downplay that, but that would be a good
Hmm.
fight. You know what I'm saying? Or that's a good
Yeah.
fight for Errol Spence. Supposedly, Stanionis is mandatory for one of those titles, and that would be an interesting fight for Errol Spence right there. And
Hmm. Yeah.
we'll
That.
see.
Yes, Stanionis is one of those hot new names in that division, who also is a pretty dangerous, I think, offensive fighter. And yeah, I
Yeah,
think that would be a good one. Yeah.
yeah, but I guess it's going to be Errol Spence versus Keith Thurman from all indications, or
Oh
at least
yeah,
the
Thurman.
WBC ordered that as the
Mister
mandatory.
Mister Show Me the Money, Thurman. Keith Thurman.
Yeah. So then that's hey man. I
He
would
was
just say
like,
that it's a interesting fight. Of course,
yeah,
Keith one-time Thurman at one point the top welterweight in the world. Some would argue the top welterweight in the world.
yeah, and I
Um,
did like him, as a fighter, but he just kind of priced himself out for a while, with. I think he's had this silly demand that he wanted. I don't know who he was going to fight, but he asked for 10 million. That's what I read the other day. 10 million for that fight. Wow, come on.
10 million.
Yeah.
Who was that? Keith Thurman.
Yeah, Thurman asked for that amount. I don't know who against it was, but I don't think it was any of those guys, Crawford or Spence. It was somebody else, I believe.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's pretty interesting right there. Now, I think that of course this would have been a excellent fight in 2017, and I'm
Yeah.
not kidding. I was trying to pull up a slide deck that I had put together. This was in 2017. It was at one of my previous jobs. We had this thing where you could it's almost like a showcase type thing where you could speak on some of your hobbies or things that you're interested in. So I did
Hmm.
one unboxing and I put together this presentation. Speaking of the fighters at that particular time, this was in 2017. Who I thought were the top fighters, who were the best welterweights that were out there, etc. And I had Kell Brook up there as the top welterweight,
But
and of
yeah,
course you had Errol Spence, Keith Thurman, and that's the year that Spence fought Brook.
yeah, no,
So I say that to
me,
say that 2017, man, this would have been a hell of a fight. Here
yeah,
in 2022, I don't know. you know,
yeah, no,
I have no
yeah,
idea.
I agree, yeah, definitely.
I think the
Yeah.
momentum is certainly on Errol Spence's side. Keith Thurman, he fought sporadically over the last
Mhm.
several years, which typically doesn't speak to him being able to upset the apple cart when you have another guy in his prime who has been active and has been fighting top level competition. And Keith Thurman, of course, coming off of that Pacquiao loss, I know he fought Barrios,
Yeah.
who probably isn't a well, I don't consider him a top tier talent at welterweight, and I do think that he was kind of a name that was kind of building up and didn't really
Yeah.
develop into anything major. He's just going to be one of those
Mm.
sort of outlier competitors that is out there who's gotten in some big fights and lost to some big names, but certainly not
Yeah.
anything to write home about. But that has been pretty much the majority of what Keith Thurman has done. And at this point, of course, this Spence fight, yeah, it just feels a little bit different, even if they do fight at this particular point. And I don't know why the WBC would order this as the mandatory outside of they have some type of interest financially, of course,
Mhm.
which is always the case with these
Mm.
sanctioning bodies. Because yeah, I don't feel that Thurman has done anything to be considered the WBC mandatory, and
Yeah.
that
I
fight
mean,
in order as though he's just been out there being a world beater on the trajectory he was. But
I don't know who's he with. Is he still with top rank or top rank? I know he was
I
with
think he
them.
was PBC. He was PBC. I don't know if
Right.
so. I don't know the particulars of that deal in terms of facing Pacquiao, if he had to sign a deal with them or what. But uh,
Because
yeah,
I know I watched an Instagram live stream with him where it was last year, I believe, where he kind of was really down on Bob Arum and blamed him for some kind of stuff. I don't know. I'm not getting fights and not getting enough money and stuff like that.
also
Yeah.
maybe that was the case there. Maybe he
Mm.
is with top
I
rank.
sound like, very typical kind of whining to me, like some fighters, they just have an easy time complaining about their managers or promoters when haven't actually done enough by themselves, to get the fights, you know, or
Yeah,
haven't earned it simply, by being more, exciting in by not, he's won some of his fights by simply being more clever, and he was a little bit too cautious in some of his fights, I think Thurman, when he could have gone more like, all out.
yeah. There was a point where I considered him the best welterweight, but that has since passed. And
Yeah,
after losing to Pacquiao in 2019, it looks like this Barrios fight in February of this year has been his only fight since then.
Warriors,
So
yeah.
so he's had a lot of periods there where there's been some long layoffs, and I know he
Mm,
was nursing an injury at one point, and I don't know what the deal. So this Barrios fight was a Fox pay-per-view, which tells me that there's still some ties to PBC in some capacity. So, and maybe that's why this is being made. So I don't
PBC.
know that he has a deal with Top Rank. If anyone knows, definitely leave it in the
Well, you mean
comments.
PBC, that's pretty boy, isn't it? Is that Floyd Mayweather's company or what?
Well, it's more so Al Haven who
Oh
has
yeah,
deep
Heyman.
ties to Floyd Mayweather, of course.
Yeah,
So
the
yeah, it's one of
dark.
those power broker. Al Heyman, one of those power brokers in the sport of boxing, and I guess
Yeah,
those
he's
negotiations that were going on for Tyson, or not Tyson, but Errol Spence, Bud Crawford, they involved Al Heyman. At least that's what was stated by Terrence Crawford when he had his sort of tell-all podcast or live stream speaking on why the fight broke down. He mentioned speaking directly with Al Heyman, and there were some things that I guess weren't going to be able to get done because of the fact that he said Al mentioned that they've never been done like this in the sport of boxing in terms of moving past the network involvement and looking for sort of some outside sources. So I don't know, but Al Heyman is one of those guys who's kind of low key. You never really see him, but he
yeah,
is a major name there as far as
shadowy.
boxing's concerned.
I mean, it's like people don't know so much about him, but it's obvious that he's got pretty much quite a lot of power and influence.
Yes, yes, he does. He definitely does in that
Mm,
sense. Rodolfo Rivera says, "I'm pretty interested to see how Derman does this time around. He looks very motivated by the looks of it." Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's been talking the talk, and hey, this is his opportunity. This is a fight that I know a lot of us were looking for at some point in previous years. We never got to see it, and while it might be 5 years past its sort of due date, we'll see. It could turn out to still be something pretty interesting when it does happen, and hopefully it leads to the fight at welterweight we all want to see that seems to keep evading us, much like some of the other big fights in the sport of boxing. And shout out to Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz, and more, who said, "Salute, brothers. Salute to Bruce Gas. Be sure to give him a follow."
I don't
Bruce
know.
Gas, Boxing Jazz. He's one of the entertaining boxing connoisseurs here on YouTube. So be sure to give Bruce Gas a follow. It's always great being able to check out his show, and a lot of good stuff goes down there. So salute to Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz, and more. So we're speaking on Thurman versus Spence being the potential matchup that's on tap for Errol Spence, and of course Terrence Crawford is going to be taking on David Avanesian. And hopefully that leads to Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence happening at some point in
Mm.
2023.
Before
But
Crawford gets too old.
we can't put our hopes up because boxing, you just when we think it's going to do us right, sometimes it
Yeah,
does us wrong. So if we end
yeah,
up going, this
the
fight ends
best.
up not happening, it'd be on a long list of great fights that never got made or it was
Or
past their expiration date.
some that happened too late, like Manny versus Floyd.
Yeah, yeah, like we can't quite ever get them right there at the peak, except in the smaller weights, I would say. Or the fighters really have to want it; they have to be
Mm.
hungry for us to get made. And it's like when they make that good money. Of course, I guess it becomes harder to make these fights happen, or at least
You
some of
know,
them. But
yeah, just got. I'm gonna have to correct myself. It's not a problem that it was late, but it would have always been like that. I mean, Bob Arum said in 2009 that it would be a stinking fight, and he knew it. Because Floyd doesn't engage. Especially against guys like Pacquiao.
yeah,
Well, yeah. So
yeah. I mean, it certainly should have happened ideally between probably
and
2009
then yeah,
and
nine.
2012.
Yeah.
Once it got past that point, then it was a little bit of okay, is this going to ever happen? Is it going to be the same? And I think many of us felt it was probably
Mm,
not going to be the
Pacquiao.
same, especially with Pacquiao coming off the heels of those Marquez fights, the
Yeah,
one where
being
he was knocked out,
yeah, yeah. That was what I was gonna say. He was knocked out in
So that buildup
2012.
took a lot of the luster off of it, but
Yeah.
we got it, of course, and lo and
Mm,
behold, it turned out to be a not so good fight.
yeah.
But Floyd won. He
That's how it
kind of
goes.
dominated in some sense, but definitely wasn't
Not
what
a,
we thought it
yeah,
would be.
yeah. of
And
course.
hopefully that's not the case with Crawford Spence. Stylistically, they're both guys who like to engage. So
Mm.
maybe that makes for a very compelling fight because Crawford has that dog in him and he'll force it, and it'll be a
It's,
good one.
the problem was that Floyd was just too fond of his zero, so he wouldn't risk anything, in his
Yeah,
last few years. That was obvious. So he
yeah,
won.
certainly. Shout
Yeah.
out to my mother says, guys, happy Sunday. I believe that's the case. Uh,
Mm. That must be your mother. Yeah.
yeah,
Hello, Joshua's
if
mom.
not, my apologies, but I think that's her. So
Yeah.
says,
The hug there, it looks like her. Yeah.
hard to tell, but Facebook user, we appreciate it. We appreciate the Facebook user without a doubt. Thank you for dropping by.
Whoever you are,
Um,
Facebook.
yeah, Facebook user, we appreciate you dropping by. Yeah, we're talking a little boxing, what happened over the weekend, what's in store. But yeah, we're winding down on the year. As we mentioned, Crawford Spence, those are some that are out there. A good fight that is happening that everyone should check out this coming weekend is one between Juan Francisco Estrada and Chocolatito
Mm.
Gonzalez. This is a rematch, well, a trilogy actually. They fought twice in the first fight some years ago. Chocolatito won. Estrada pulled off the victory last year in a very good fight. I felt that Chocolatito won that fight. That was just my opinion, but of course it was a close fight, and Estrada looked good as
It
well.
is.
Uh, but we're gonna get that third fight between the two, and
Mm.
they make for an excellent matchup just naturally given their styles. We're gonna have an offensive Chocolatito who comes forward. He really throws a lot of punches, and then he'll mix it up there in the pocket. Estrada is a good boxer. He can move well, nice jab. He'll mix it up as well. So it should be some pretty sustained action at points. But I'm looking forward to this fight, and I'm glad that they were able to make it happen. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on Estrada Chocolatito 3? See, will there be answers? Will we get definitive answers as to who
Yeah.
is ahead in this trilogy?
It is now officially 1-1 there, so this will hopefully settle the score. And I mean, yeah, I mean, as I said before, I wasn't impressed by Estrada's last fight, or maybe I didn't say that.
Yeah, oh yeah. Definitely
And
tougher. I think they were probably looking past, considering they seem to
yeah,
already have this Chocolatito fight on tap, and it was signed and
yeah.
everything.
So RG Cortez was really, I mean, he beat Estrada up pretty much in a fight, and
Yeah,
hadn't it been for a knockdown, I scored it for Estrada, but only with 1 point because of that knockdown. So having that in mind, I don't exactly favor him in this fight. And I would say you had Chocolatito winning the last fight as well. So I haven't seen it, but I believe you. I think that Chocolatito simply has more of everything. I mean, as a offensive fighter, especially Estrada may be a little more, better perhaps defensively. I don't know. A little. Oh, that was the chair.
Mhm.
uh, but yeah, I don't know really. I expect Chocolatito to win this fight simply because he lost the last one. Now he wants revenge, and we know that when he is at his best, he's practically unbeatable and unstoppable. He's just like a force of nature.
Yeah,
So
yeah, he is a tough cookie. And shout out to my mom there. She said you already know Son and Boz. Excuse me, that confirms it. Appreciate you dropping in without a doubt. But yeah, I'm leaning a little bit towards Estrada in this fight. I do think it goes the distance, and I think that Estrada will likely get the edge. But that being said, it's close to pretty much 50-50 as far as I'm concerned, and I understand those leaning towards Gonzalez. I think that the fight with Cortez was tougher for Estrada than he probably expected, but that
mm,
may have been good work in preparing him and getting him ready to take on Gonzalez here for the third time. And he will have had a camp in between the time since that last fight when these two faced off. And I think Gonzalez, he did fight Julio Cesar Martinez at one point, but I do think that Estrada, having fought more recent, and it wasn't too long ago, he probably went back to the lab, worked on some things, and fully put efforts into making sure that he's going to be ready for this fight coming up. I do think it'll be an exciting fight, and I certainly look forward to it without a doubt. And I think that the fans will be treated to another stylistic action matchup because these two seem
Mm.
to match up very, very well. And shout out to Mr. Paz International.
Zanetti, he was the captain of Inter Milan.
El,
So,
Cap, El
yeah.
Capitan, Inter Milan, so internationalized Milano. Of course, one of the fan favorites, one of the top teams that have been out there uh, in the Italian league for sure. World level
Mm,
team, without a doubt. And
yeah.
Boz decided to show some support, show some love. Shout out to those in the World Cup. Germany is down 1-0 to Espanyol right
All
now.
right. Oh, they
So
are in
they are
big
on the
trouble.
verge of being knocked out of this thing, even though they're probably a favorite for some.
Yeah,
Hey,
that would be
myself
a
included. I
shame.
thought they would at least make it out of this group stage.
Yeah, but were they not also knocked down in the first stage? I mean, in the last, I believe, because it was like I know that in 2010 Spain won, and then in the
Yeah.
next World Cup they were knocked out in first stage, and then 2014 Germany won, and they also got knocked out in the
Yeah, that was
next.
the old Spain team after they won it.
Yeah.
And they kind of built back up. Germany, that was getting up there a little bit as well. The older team
Mm.
might still be the case right now. Maybe
Boy.
that's why, but they're going to need some fresh rebounds. So they're down 30 minutes left,
Germany.
essentially.
As the Scousers say Germany.
Yeah. Mr. Paz says, yeah, Germany finished bottom of the group in 2018, lost to South Korea and Mexico, I believe. Oh, yeah, because South Korea
Yeah,
got that sort of historic
we got a
upset for them.
football fan here. Nice.
Oh, yeah, appreciate it, Mr. Paz. Yeah, we talk about some World Cup as well. We've been tuning in, seeing a lot of the good action here, and we'll continue to follow. Looking forward to
Hmm.
next week. We'll get to see if USA can hang in there, if they can
Hmm.
pull out this win over Iran, which they should be able to pull off.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Iran lost 6-1 to England. So
yeah, it was.
they,
But
I
then they
thought,
came back and beat
yeah,
Wales. You know.
yeah, they did, but it was like at overtime, and Wales they just couldn't score, and it's simply that's what happens usually when one team cannot score, the other one scores.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, certainly,
Mm.
certainly. But yeah,
It's
we'll
like
see how
a
it goes.
law of physics, football physics.
Yeah, without a doubt. But yeah, a lot of good stuff. Yeah,
Mm.
but then as far as the boxing action, I know we've covered majority of the stuff. I guess it's all what we
Yeah,
already talked about, kind of Fury versus
yeah, it was a good
Chisora.
weekend. We got more next weekend at least.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, there
for
will be more action next weekend for sure. We'll have to, I
mm.
guess, talk Fury, Chisora.
Finally it's looking up.
Yep, Julio Cesar Martinez is going to be back in the mix.
Oh yeah.
Wanted to mention him. Then we have Teofimo
Martin.
Lopez coming up. It's going to be on that same weekend as
Oh yeah.
Crawford
Hmm.
Avenesian. So Teofimo Lopez is going to be taking on Sandor Martin, the guy
Oh
who beat
yeah, the
Spanish
Spanish
guy
guy.
who beat
Yeah.
Mikey Garcia.
Oh
I
yeah.
expect Teofimo to win that fight. I expect
He's
it'll probably go to distance.
isn't Sandor Martin like more of a technical boxer
Yes,
type?
he
Yeah.
is. He is. So he's going to make Teofimo box for sure.
Mm.
And I think Teofimo should beat him. This is a replacement for what was initially going to be Jose Pedraza. And of course, we know Sniper Pedraza, solid fighter, been in a lot of wars as of late. So I would have favored Teofimo over
Yeah.
Pedraza, given such as well. A lot of wear and tear there over the last several years for sure. It was in a
Mm.
tough fight with Comey that ended up being a draw, though some felt that Pedraza deserved the nod.
Yeah, Teofimo just needs to look good against Martin, and in order to build himself back up and
Yeah.
get like those biggest fights, of course.
Yeah, and that's kind of the stage we're at with Teofimo. Yeah, to kind of be in build up mode again and get him back out there as one of those big names.
Yeah.
He should deliver. Which I expect him to beat Sandor Martin. So you have
Mm,
that. Then you have Josh Warrington.
he's good enough. Mm.
Going to be fighting on that same weekend as
Oh
well
yeah, Warrington. Yeah,
against.
Leeds Warrior.
Yes, yes. Um, he's going to be
Yeah.
taking on Lopez. Let me see what his first name is, but this is the guy that knocked off Isaac Lowe
Oh yeah.
not too
So
long ago.
kudos
Yeah,
to Warrington. He really will fight anybody.
yeah. Luis Alberto Lopez
Mm,
going with the upset there, or at least upset for some. I think that Lopez can definitely upset the apple cart. He beat, as mentioned, he beat Isaac Lowe, took out Isaac Lowe, and he traveled across the pond to be able to do so. He also
mm,
beat who else did he beat? Gabriel Flores Jr. gave him his first loss. I remember seeing that. And that was someone hyped up by Top Rank. Of course, they were trying to build him into this star, this young guy they had signed
mm,
early, who's kind of on the downside right now, at least, as the competition has stepped up. But that being said, Lopez could be in store for an upset there, upset by
mm.
some standards. Yeah, and then we're going to have some other good stuff coming up as well that we'll likely get to at some
Yeah.
point. Ebony Bridges takes in on O'Connell, bad blood between the two Australian
Right.
women. Mickey Cumlin's going to be making his return against Gearfy, or I'm pretty sure I'm saying his name right. Wrong, I mean. So Mickey
Karim.
Cumlin's going to be back in the mix. Some good stuff coming up.
Yeah. Yeah. There's never, of course, Ebony Bridges always brings a lot of fun. At least I think
Mm-hmm.
she has a fan-friendly style. That much I can say for her. She is really likes to
Yeah,
slug it out, and yeah,
yeah.
mm,
Yeah, and these two are going to have some bad blood, so I think that we're going to see sort of one of
yeah, a
those
lot
drag them
of
out back and forth fights.
yeah. We'll see two women, both women bruised in the end,
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
bruised
they've
up.
been taking shots at each other in the media, so
Yeah, all right.
interesting is what it's going to be for sure.
Mm,
So definitely one to tune into, everyone. But yeah, I mean that's
cool.
kind of where we stand. We're closing out
Yep.
2022, as we all know. Of
All
course,
right.
there's already some stuff that has been mentioned and I guess kind of lined up for 2023. But we'll see how things go as we finish out this year and see if the trajectory changes on anything.
Mm,
But certainly, we thank everyone for being here in attendance. Appreciate you dropping in, sharing your thoughts. Shout out to Mr. Paz, my mom, Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz, Rodolfo, Mad Dog H, Random Acoustic Thoughts dropped in. Appreciate you dropping in, buddy. And of course, Baza John here. Give him a follow. He'll be tagged in the title. We're trying to make
mm,
it happen. Just going to keep pushing this stuff out of there. We appreciate you all taking your time to come join us as we discuss boxing, this great sport, and the action that it has provided.
mm.
So thank you to everyone there in attendance. Any closing thoughts there, Baz?
Yeah, we enjoyed a really pretty good weekend of boxing, and there's still more to come before the end of the year. So it can get bad. I mean, it can be bad. Now after so long, so many weekends where there were not nothing particular to look forward to. So yeah, that's a good thing.
Cool, cool. Only up from here. Only up from here.
Yep.
Be sure to follow the Boxing Haven on Facebook. Go check out the group. Join in on the discussions. But thank you, everyone, and certainly have a good rest of your day. Happy Thanksgiving for those in America celebrating such. And we'll be with you all next week.
Yep.